Okay, so we're going to talk about Chapter 2 now, Understanding Educational Technology Issues and Trends, which is good because that goes with our course. Um, we're going to talk about assessing your receptiveness to innovation and your readiness to become a technology using teacher, and in this case, curriculum writer, assessor, whatever you're going to be. Discuss reasons to engage students in using technology for learning. Analyze some of the barriers to teachers and students' technology use. Describe different patterns of technology used by teachers. And evaluate how technology supports different teaching philosophies and instructional methods, and compare how students use technology in their daily lives and in school. So the focus questions this week would be, how do you classify your interest in using technology in both your life and in teaching and learning and education in general? What motivates you to use or to consider technologies in teaching? What impedes your use of technologies in teaching or learning? How often do you use or plan to use the following technologies in teaching and learning, and how likely are you to use the following teaching methods immediately in the classroom? How are students using technology for learning in and out of the school? So, how would you classify your interest in using technology in teaching and learning? Um, there are a lot of different uh, theories on this that we'll discuss throughout this chapter. Um, do you consider yourself a frontier developer, an innovator, an early adapter, quick to follow proven success, cautious observer, skeptical observer, don't pay much attention, or see very little promise in using technology, not only in teaching and learning, but in designing curriculum, administrative things, assessments, all those types of things can be associated with these questions, or your how you feel about technology. There's a thing called the Rogers Innovation Curve. I have a graphic on it on the next slide, but it proposes that every new idea, whether it's technology or the invention of a toaster or something, I mean, it doesn't matter. Anything new is met with a small number of innovators and early adapters, meaning there's only a few people that buy into um, new ideas. The majority don't want to even listen to it. And then a small number of individuals avoid any change whatsoever. So the curve is here, and it's got the innovators at 2.5%, early adapters at 13.5%, and then the early majority is 34, the late majority is 34, and what's called the laggards, the people that don't want change at all, is 16%. And it says trying to convince the mass of a new idea is useless. We want to try to convince innovators and early adapters first. And that they talk about this in this chapter because a lot of people don't like technology in education, particularly teachers who have been teaching for 20 some odd years without technology, and then all this technology comes about and they get, they're resistant to it. And there is a paradigm shift that has to happen. And some people don't want to deal with that shift um, for a myriad of reasons that we'll discuss. One-to-one computing is something that we want to try to get to our students to ensure everybody has some type of computing device, a computer, a tablet, or what have you. Um, the growth of these programs is driven by the availability of powerful, low-cost devices, which are starting to come to pass. Um, the increased requirement for or encouragement of students to own their own laptop or tablet in higher education, which is not always an easy thing to do. And then studies linking one-to-one programs with increased student success. So we look at the data and we say, look, when they have these computers, when they have access to computers, when we provide computers, we have increased success. And the data's telling us that we do. So the bring your own device uh, technology, um, meaning students bring their own laptops or tablets or whatever to classes, is um, becoming more popular. Um, and it's more popular for a myriad of reasons. Number one, if the students are bringing their own stuff, the institution doesn't have to pay for it. The other thing is students seem to be more comfortable with their own devices. They know how it works. They know what's going to work for them, what's not going to work for them. So that's another one. But the other problem is these programs may leave low-income students unable to access the latest, most powerful devices, meaning some students just can't afford it, and that could be an issue. Pew uh, came up with a thing in 2009 called the Internet and American Life Project, and it divided Americans in 10 categories based on their use of technology. And they don't have this test anymore. I wanted to be able to give you this test so you could see what you were. But the 10 outcomes were a digital collaborator, an ambivalent networker, a media mover, a roving node, desktop veteran, drifting surfer, information encumbered, mobile newbie, and technology indifferent, meaning you just didn't care about technology. So I would ask you to reflect on that. You don't need to write it or anything, but just think about what you might be. So as a teacher, an administrator, designer, all these things, you have to ask yourself, will you lead, follow, or stay behind the innovation curve? I believe most of us want to be a leader. I hope you want to be a leader. So, teachers view technology as a powerful way to motivate and engage students. The question is, how do they do it? Okay, we know it can be a powerful way, but we don't want to use technology for technology's sake. That's not the way to go. So we have to talk and understand why we're putting technology in curriculum, in lesson plans, and in our assessments. So that has to be discussed. Because more and more students are disengaged and alienated from school for a myriad of reasons. Um, they're bored in class, doing homework or prepping for another class, group projects and lessons. Incorporating technology are most academically engaging. So we're finding that technology can help um, bridge the boredom. So the two central aspects of teachers' work are institutional practices, working directly with students, discussion, presentation of projects, and then administrative professional activities, planning, organizing, and record keeping, grading, correspondence, reporting, all those types of stuff. But there's other stuff too that teachers do on a daily basis: classroom management, seating charts, um, attendance, all that type of thing. And most teachers are familiar with these, hopefully familiar with uh, tools such as email and correspondence and record keeping. So, um, interactive technology may be less familiar, but I'm seeing it being not that big of an issue anymore. Ebooks, things we could do with students are ebooks instead of paper books. Um, and young readers. This is all they're going to know from a point. You know, eventually, books will be an artifact that we don't use that much anymore because we're going to be reading everything on the web or downloading it. The big barriers are lack of access. There are a lot of schools still out there that have some computers, and a lot of schools there's computers in every classroom. Bigger problem too is maintaining them, keeping them going. Computers get old and obsolete, changing hardware and software requirements, and all these other things. Um, this is another issue. Teaching schedules are the periods too short to allow the integration of technology? And we're finding that in some cases, yes, it is. Um, Everything has to be set up in order for the student to come in and be ready to go. And sometimes in a 50-minute period, it's not working. And then curriculum requirements. We're finding is there pressure to cover specific things regarding technology in the curriculum. We know that there are state standards that require that we use technology if we want money, um, and that can be an issue. So, uh, and then the skills. Is a teacher comfortable with technology? Some teachers aren't, and in reality, they have a right to be. Some teachers just don't want to use technology, and that has to be considered when writing curriculum. Um, does a school have a technological leadership? Well, most schools do. Most schools have an IT person or a technology coach and media specialists, which used to be called librarians, things like that. And then personal attitudes. Does a teacher personally respect the technology that they're being asked to use? Some don't. Digital divide and participation gaps. We talked about that a little bit. Um, Access to use of technology is not distributed evenly through society or school. We're finding the gap is lowering or decreasing, but it's still out there, and it's mainly affecting low-income, non-white, rural students. But the government's making great strides in getting everybody access. So it hasn't happened yet to everybody's satisfaction, but it is on the radar. Um, so technology access exists among a long spectrum of experience known as a digital continuum. So there is the have and have nots. That gap is being decreased, and um, we're finding that just about everybody has access to it. May not be in the classroom, may not be in their home, but there are media centers, there are computer labs that students can go to. We are finding lack of access to technology can contribute to an achievement gap. Um, uh, the interest in math, science, and engineering, STEM, and technology may be influenced by the teacher's use of technology. Um, and of course, that's my personal wheelhouse. And yeah, we, technology is not just a computer. So, are they using some other types of technology other than a math, a computer, or a calculator rather? Are they doing other things, trying to make things hands-on like in trigonometry, setting a rocket off and having the students actually make an altitude meter to find out how high the rocket went. So things like that. And then science, we could talk about virtual chemistry labs and all these other things too. Um, so overcoming the barriers preventing students from learning is central to a teacher's job. And sometimes that barrier is technology. The roles are changing. Um, we used to use computers only for the mundane things as email and writing stuff and record keeping. But now we're trying to get into, you know, interactive websites that can help students learn or get the big idea that the teacher wants to get across to them, things like that. We're going to do a couple projects on that. It says teachers still express concern that students are naive consumers of online content and easily distracted by technology. I don't think they're naive of the online content, but yeah, they're easily distracted. That's an issue, and it's an increasing battle to keep students on track when they have access to the internet and they have 100 different places to go other than where you want them to go. So it can be an issue. Technology still has its critics. Now, you looked at the article last week, and I don't think Larry Kubin was on that article, but I think someone talked about him. And Kubin said this a while ago that computers are oversold and underused. They're used for drill and practice, word processing, and encyclopedic information access. They have a potential for exploratory learning, creative self-expression, and analytical research. When Kubin said that about, some have been 15 years, that's the way it was then. It's not really that way now. We are using them for exploratory learning and creative self-expression and analytical research. There is the issue of exposure to technology may rewrite young brains to expect instant gratification or overwhelm them with commercial content. That's true. And unfortunately, that's a society we live in now, this instant gratification society. But um, we as educators need to harness that. We as curriculum writers and administrators need to harness that. And the data is actually showing us that we are making inroads on that. The commercial content is another issue that we'll talk about another time. Now, you're going to need to write a philosophy, if you haven't already, on your views of teaching. And this is a very simple one, but are you a facilitator or an explainer? Um, what are your goals of learning? What's the student motivation? What's the classroom organization? So, do we see sense making by students, content delivery by teachers, interest and effort, knowledge and required curriculum by the student? How's the classroom organization? Are we doing multiple small groups, whole groups, one-on-one, all these types of things? So we're gonna talk about your philosophy, not in this presentation, but we'll talk about that another time. Flipped classrooms. Flipped classrooms came about 5 years ago. and they employ technology to reverse traditional modes. So the student-led classroom activities arrive prepared. Um, students lead, students lead classroom activities and arrive prepared to learn by completing activities and contributing online. So the teacher gives them something to do online at home. It's essentially homework, and then the theory being they come into class ready to go and do activities based on what they learned online that night. Um, so they're going to watch podcasts, videos, YouTube, something outside of class, and then come to class ready to go. And in theory, that's a great idea, but students don't. Some students will not do their homework, and that's becoming an issue. So flipped classrooms were very popular. The idea was very popular about 5, 6 years ago. Um, I haven't seen any data recently on the success of it or not. Um, but essentially, it's giving them digital homework and then having them come in. And the success of flipped classroom is entirely on whether the student chooses to do it or not. Common Core standards emphasize critical reading and writing and math skills built on problem solving. And the whole issue with Common Core standards. Conceptually, Common Core was a great idea. It's run by the states, but um, the concept being that every child in every state are learning basically the same things, the same way. Um, so if a student lived in Florida and moved to Alaska, they would be learning the same type of things, and it would be a bad transition. In addition, when students graduate, they all know the same things that we can use in the private sector when they get jobs or they come to college or whatnot. It's been somewhat of a train wreck in implementing it. There's a lot of complaints on what's going on. Um, it does emphasize critical reading and writing and math skills. Um, and there's money involved, and some students in a physical education class are being asked to write things that they normally wouldn't do in that class back in the day. Um, it's been a real issue. So, but not all states adopted it. Florida adopted it for about a year, and then they didn't want to do it anymore. So they made their own Florida core standards. Um, so there are several states that don't use Common Core. Florida is one of them. The ISTE standards, the International Society of Technology and Education, call for increased use of technology to make new learning experiences possible. So it's less teacher talk and more interaction and collaboration with the students, um, less individual work and more collaborative projects, and less emphasis on recall and testing and more on inquiry thinking and problem solving. So the state of Florida um, has the SD standards within their budgetary requirements. They use these standards to assess um, if their schools are using technology properly, and if they are, they get money. So the SC standards are a big deal, um, and they have a lot of measures that can be assessed, and the state will come in and do an assessment and give you accreditation for your technology use in all myriads of education, curriculum design, administrative, teaching, and they assess. And if you're doing what you need to do, then you're more than likely going to get the money from the state. Different paths to technological literacy. Well, in my view, all students that are in K through 12 at this very moment are technologically literate. Okay, now the question is, what are we doing as educators to harness that literacy? You know, any kid can get on Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and all those types of things. But how are we harnessing it as educators? That's the issue. It says digital immigrants came to computer late in life and often focus on the machine, and digital natives have grown up using technology, usually focus on the applications. Um, and there's an initial experience as the lens filter through which technology is viewed. So we know the kids nowadays know about technology. That's not an issue. I mean, literally out of the womb, the baby's saying, where's my Facebook page? I want a selfie, all that type of stuff. So we know they know they're technologically literate, but are they educationally technologically literate? That's the other issue. Um, Students view the internet as a virtual textbook and reference library, a tutor, study shortcut, a virtual study group, guidance counselor, locker, backpack, and notebook. So these kids know how to use the internet. The question is, how are we using the internet to help us get them to learn? There is a digital disconnect that exists when students perceive their teachers to be less internet and technologically savvy. A lot of them will want to help the teacher. Some will laugh at the teacher, those types of things. And students enjoy learning with technology even when it's not required. We know that. We have there are complaints by like Cuban about technology, but we found students enjoy multitasking and free-flowing, flexible, sociable, unscripted settings. So we're trying very hard to dismay the views of Cuban. Teachers will either bridge or disconnect or broaden it. And as educational leaders, curriculum writers, assessors, uh, or teachers, we want to broaden it. Okay, that's the end of this one. Thank you very much.